Please turn to page 1 of recitations. All mothers,
sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mothers, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mothers, sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood.
Thus,
until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind.
These two are the aspiration and engagement bodhicitta, and they are words that founder of the Kaygu, Kyoba Jiden Sungun, wrote. So they are called the uncommon, as in unique to him. The words, that is, the teaching on bodhicitta is, of course, not unique to him. But the particular expression for aspiration and engagement bodhicitta, these are uncommon, unshared, unique to him. And it's how Dharma Kaygu begins almost all of its practices, of its gathering. Aspiration and engagement bodhicitta is discussed in Shantideva's classic called The Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and of course in many other places. But the one that we're most familiar with, or the one that you could easily consult, is to consult the opening chapter of Shantideva's Bodhisattva's Way of Life, whereby he says that if we were to discuss the topic of bodhicitta, then that topic can be divided into the aspirational and the engagement. Then he gives the analogy that the aspirational is like coming up with a desire to go somewhere, and the engagement is the actual going. So that's how he explained aspiration and engagement bodhicitta. There is an alternative explanation to that, which says that actually both aspirational and engagement bodhicitta pertains to the mind training side of things. So what they mean there is then aspirational bodhicitta is the desire or the aspiration to go somewhere. Then engagement bodhicitta is making the commitment to go. Engagement bodhicitta is making the commitment to go. Then the actual going, they say, are the mirrored bodhisattva practices. Yeah, of course, these are just kind of, given enough time, the intellectual community kind of try to tease out all these implications, potential implications. Not that important if we were only cultivating these practices, practicing for ourselves, but might be useful if we find ourselves in position to share this with others, to know at least a little bit of this. No need to know all the ins and outs. That's reserved for those who are training professionally to teach others. Then it should also be pointed out that taking this a step further, there's the division of bodhicitta into relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta. And when we divide bodhicitta into these two, relative and absolute, then all that we've been talking about so far, quoting Shantideva or pointing to Shantideva, and these two passages that we just recited, they belong to the relative. So the relative bodhicitta then is the practice of love and compassion imbued with the understanding that our love and compassion for sentient beings will not really find a thorough solution if we did not direct this love and compassion towards the goal of liberating sentient beings from confusion, the basic problem. And so that's why I said that bodhicitta, while it's rooted in love and compassion, and in that sense is universal, not to be chauvinistic, not to be exclusive. It is also said that love and compassion by themselves technically is not yet bodhicitta, right? Because it's lacking in the understanding that until and unless basic avidya, often translated as ignorance, but I prefer confusion, that if that basic confusion is not dispelled, then all your love and compassion directed at alleviating other people's suffering and giving them happiness, it's like giving someone a fish rather than teaching them how to fish, how to eat for a lifetime. So thank you. So that is relative bodhicitta. Then absolute bodhicitta is the absolute bodhicitta is one word, or two words, an expression referring to something that has different names in different contexts. In some contexts, it's called intrinsic awakening or innate awakening. Trungpa Rinpoche calls it basic goodness. In the classical texts, it's called Buddha nature. In Mahamudra tradition, it's called the natural state, or the nature of mind. In Dzogchen as well is the natural state. In some contexts, it's Rigpa, basic awareness, and so on and so forth. So that's absolute bodhicitta, as in right now, whether we subjectively recognize that our intrinsic nature is this basic goodness, this absolute bodhicitta, this innate wakefulness, whether we subjectively realize it or not, it's a reality. And so that's the absolute side. By relying on relative bodhicitta, then we can realize or uncover this basic goodness, this innate wakefulness, this Buddha nature, this nature of mind, this natural state. So that we say that the path does not in any way add to what is basic. The path is not, the path meaning the methods, are not methods for self-improvement. The self in the relative sense cannot be improved because by definition it's the troublemaker. The self in the absolute sense need no improvement. Seeking to improve it simply means we don't get it, right? Then it becomes contrivances. So in the Mahamudra tradition, the language often leans along the side of being natural and being uncontrived. But we should not be carried away by the language of being uncontrived and being natural, because within Mahamudra training, there is the utilization of contrived practices and methods. And they recognize it as such. They call it, these are contrived. So the problem isn't so much whether they're contrived or not. The problem is, are we aware or not that it is contrived? So Jonsar Khyentse Rinpoche said, it is important to understand that every aspect of the path or the method is afflicted. That doesn't mean then we don't rely on the path. It means that we rely on the path in a skillful way. Understanding that, even the most advanced state of practice still retains some kind of obscuration. So in Jigten Sumgön's most famous kind of set of sayings that is said to encapsulate Jigten Sumgön's views, this is a set of statements collected by his kind of closest disciple, Sherab Jumne, collected together called the single intention Gongji. He says, and there's a one line there that says, all views obscure. Obscure and are obscured. They're both obscured, and that means there's some taint, some obscuration, and they also have the potential to obscure. So there is, then in commentaries it says, whatever level of the path that you're at, do understand that it still involves some sort of obscuration. So then to those who argue, whether the grade seal Mahamudra is more great, or the great perfection Dzogchen is more great, or the great Madhyamaka is more great, to that Janism says, they're all obscure. They're all obscure. Knowing that they're all obscure, then we don't throw them out. Knowing that they're all obscure, then we learn to handle and utilize them in a skillful way. In some ways, you can say to hold them lightly, and not to grasp at them and say, this is my view, this is my opinion. We go about looking for some philosophical view, some opinion that is the most meaningful to us, right? And then we kind of cling on to that. And that's when an obscured view in turn obscures. Anyway, coming back to bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta, the very basis of bodhicitta is love and compassion. Love and compassion plus what's called bodhicitta as well. And there, when they say bodhicitta has three aspects, love, compassion, and bodhicitta, what they mean is, in relative bodhicitta, you need love and compassion and the wisdom aspect coming together. But without love and compassion, the wisdom would not amount to anything. So it's important to cultivate love and compassion. Love is the wish for all to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Compassion is the wish for all to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Those are the definition of love and compassion. And these words have a lot of different meanings for different people and different traditions. So we should know what Buddha's definition of love and compassion are. Then when we know what Buddha's definition of love and compassion is, then it's okay. If other people use it differently, you can agree or not agree, but that's, no need to get into arguments of, no, love is this or compassion is that. Just, we just need to know Buddha's definition of what love and compassion is, and know that, those are basic ingredients, elements needed for bodhicitta. Page 6 is where we say the top of page 6 is refuge part. Refuge is our reference point. You could say it's like the pole star, or in this case, in this day and time, the GPS on your phone is refuge. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. But the Dharma Sangha are not objects of worship. They are not, sitting around waiting for us to praise them and say nice things about them and show them how good we are. Although certainly Buddhists are very into writing praises and so on and so forth about the qualities of the three jewels. But we say all those are done for our own benefit to help us recognize more deeply why the three jewels are reliable. But ultimately, the three jewels, in a way you could say, have no interest in how much we flatter them or how much offerings we give them. If they're interested in that, then they're not reliable as objects of refuge. But we should relate to the three jewels as reference point rather than objects of worship. Reference point for how we live our lives, right? Buddha, what does that mean? Well, it means being awake. It means being free from confusion. Do we want to rely on that or not? Are we relying on that or not as we act and as we are, the way we are in the world? Are we using that as our reference point, or are we using something else as our reference point? So then from that perspective, you could say there are definitely lots of false idols if we don't understand or don't see clearly. Anyway, the three jewels, Gampopa says that refuge is one, but the methods are three. Refuge is one, even though the methods are three. Oh, it's just someone cleaning the doors, so be done with it and let her do her cleaning and let us be in this room. So refuge is one, but method is three. So what is this one? This one is the state of being awake, meaning Buddha. And sometimes we say, oh, no, the teachings are more important. Well, now we're just, yeah, there are times we say the teachings are more important, but we are not the kind of tradition where we say, in the end, the teachings will remain, everything else. Again, then you're relating to the teachings as if they're capital T truths that you have to swear your life, sign your life over to, and all of that. But no, it's the embodied state, is the state of being awake. That is the one refuge. Then how do we become that? Then we need the Dharma, right? And the Dharma doesn't just come to us in books. In fact, the Dharma that you find in books, ultimately, they're quite powerless. They're quite powerless. Whether you find in books or you find on the internet, in the end, they're kind of powerless. They said that they are like pictures of food. Food porn. They're powerless. They will not satisfy hunger. It's the Dharma as embodied and transmitted by the noble Sangha. Otherwise, these are all just abstracts. And they're beautiful words. I mean, yeah, you think you are inspired, and then you think, oh, wow, I have that now. When you read those words from a book on the internet. But that's not the real thing. That's not the real thing. So in terms of method, then we have three. In terms of refuge, there's only one. And that's to be awake. Then following that, the recitation is the four immeasurables. And they're the basis for cultivating, again, bodhicitta. So we come back again to bodhicitta. So now page 6.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all other sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all other sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all other sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Here is a quote from Jigten Sungen. Whatever pleasure and pain appear, if you do not understand that it appears as your own mind, you remain an outsider to this teaching. Thus, someone who wishes to obtain benefit and happiness makes efforts in the purification of their own mind. Whatever pleasure and pain appear, if you do not understand that it appears as your own mind, and here this translation here could be done in a few ways. If you do not understand that it, whether pleasure or pain, appears as your own mind, he does not translate in it as it appears in your own mind. In your own mind would be more common as a translation. And it will reflect our kind of Western kind of understanding. Like mind is something, and then things kind of take place, right? When actually we mean brain. And then things are happening in there. So here, when it says as your own mind, meaning there's nothing other than this mind. And when this mind, when you're experiencing pleasure, that's the mind. The mind is the pleasure. When you're experiencing pain, the mind is pain. It's not like the mind is experiencing pleasure or pain as, subject object. That is the mind itself. And the mind itself is nothing else but these momentary experiences. Even when unobscured, it's still momentary. It's still momentary. Whatever pleasure and pain appear, if you do not understand that it appears as your own mind, you remain an outsider to this teaching. That someone who wishes to obtain benefit and happiness makes efforts working with their own mind. Then Sherab Jungne, the kind of the closest disciple, in his biography, there's a quote that says, he said, except for this single teaching phrase, there is no other Dharma. And the phrase is, samsara and nirvana are one's own mind. I lean on this one stick. If it is there, everything is there. If it is lacking, everything lacks. Samsara and nirvana. So bondage and liberation. They are one's own mind. So everything, is one's own mind. So that's something, I think we all know this, but how often do we really deeply, know this? And how well can we utilize this knowledge that freedom and bondage is our own mind. And when freedom happens, it happens nowhere else but as mind. And when we're bound, we're not bound anywhere else but in the mind. Okay, then for meditation, so this is like view. Then for meditation, it's said that fixation fundamental fixating on the self, which is if you further define what confusion means, that basic confusion that is, that we say creates suffering, avidya, marikpa, lack of rikpa. So if we further define what this confusion is, then it is fixating or grasping at self. Then it's said that grasping at self occurs in the most fundamental way in how we relate to this body. And it's like when we kind of clench tightly, that our sense of self, our sense of I, is so tightly wrapped up with this body and how this body looks to us, how we think this body looks to others, how this body feels to us, how we think other people feel about our body, all of that this fixation is all, when we talk about grasping, it's very concretely tied to our fixation on this body. And that's why deity yoga is to subvert this and using a divine image. So they say that deity yoga's kind of superior method It's not in the idea that ultimately we are Buddha, actually. Because it says that that's already taught on the Mahayana level, that you are Buddha. So deity yoga, which is at the heart of the Vajrayana level, what is so special about it? What is so special about it is that it is a kind of superior method to subvert our day-to-day fixation on this body. And this body as we imagine it, this body as we have become attached to. Becoming attached to this body can happen in many different ways, you know. It's not just about liking, it's also about disliking. Whether you like it or you don't like it. More fundamental than the liking and the don't liking, than not liking, what you see, what you feel about yourself, about your form, that's all grounded in fixating on this as a real. So is this real or not real? Yeah? Is this real or not real? We know on the molecular level, it's not real in that sense. Meaning what? On the molecular level, it's not real. What does that mean?
It's a bunch of parts put together.
Yeah, and space and
Space and energy.
And constant
Change.
flux, right? So it's not real. When Buddhists say not real, they mean that. They don't mean, you know, like phantom. So not real. But you say, oh, it feels pretty real. So then, what is this real that you're feeling? What is this real that we're feeling?
Confusion.
We're feeling the fixation, right? Because we fixate on it, then we offer that as evidence of its reality. But it's our fixation. So deity yoga subverts that by saying, you know, you should see yourself as Chakasamara. You should see yourself as Vajrayogini. You should see yourself as Medicine Buddha. You should see yourself as, and, you know, and then there are thousands of these. Thousands of different deities. You see yourself as that. That's the method, like in deity yoga. Okay, now, let me suggest a different method, but it's moving, you know, its goal is the same. So now let's actually sit and meditate and train. In this meditation, so we're going to start and sit comfortably. It's said that the mind becomes dull when the body is not, you know, upright and straight. So it needs to be upright. Whether you're sitting on the floor, you're sitting on the chair, you're sitting on the pew, the body needs to be upright. Otherwise, the mind becomes dull. Then when you are, you know, physically in a comfortable position, alert, upright, then in this case, you can close your eyes, and in an instant, where you are seated, in place of what you think is there, now think that all that remains is a skeleton. Down to the bones, completely bleached, clean, and just a skeleton. Let your mind just rest on being a skeleton, seated, whether it's seated on the floor with legs crossed, or either all the different bones crossed, all seated on the pews. And from time to time, you can extend this and see how everyone else in this room is also in a skeletal form. Just rest on that mental image of a room full of skeletal forms. Sink into how it feels, lean into how it feels to just be a skeleton. No flesh, no blood, no muscles, no tendons. All of that have dissolved, except for white bones. Gone and liberated are your hair, however beautiful, however messy, however thick, however thin. Freed and liberated. Gone is the skin, again, however bright or dull. You can feel all elements of the body dissolve into space, and all that remains is white skeletal bones. And if all that remains are just skeletal bones, then there's nothing to do except to be present with this image. There's nothing to gain and nothing to lose at this point. But at the same time, tremendous freedom. Freedom to just be that which remains after everything has dissolved and fallen away. Just a skeletal body sitting upright. Being one with the world, being one with the universe. Just a skeletal form. At rest, at ease. Now think that whatever karmic obstacles, karmic debtors, karmic creditors, whether they want to give you back or take away from you, there's nothing for them to find except for a skeletal form sitting in the middle of open space, neither accepting nor rejecting. Instead of this, accepting or rejecting, pushing or pulling, simply be in this space. And start to see how everybody else, the voices that you're hearing outside, that those persons seated out there, they too are only skeletal. That everyone that in downtown, beyond downtown, and this town are just walking, sitting, laying down, and standing skeletal forms. No praise to accept, no blame to reject. No beauty to praise, no ugliness to disdain. Freed from all of this, just simply be present as a skeleton seated. The purpose of meditating on ourselves as a skeleton, seated in this unbounded openness, is to give up fixation on our form, on our bodies. Not because we don't like it, not because they're unclean or anything of that sort, but simply we can be free when we release fixation. And when we're able to do that, then we can authentically relate to our body, free from suffering, and only a cause of bliss. But as a preliminary, we should train to see ourselves and others as living skeletons, which we are. Underneath it all, we are walking and living skeletons. when you're ready, you can even relinquish this image of a skeleton by dropping fixation on both body and mind. And all that remains is unbounded freedom, without any overt reference point to any form, to any bodies. So this will help too with deity yoga. Difficulties with deity yoga is related to our habit of fixating on this. So this as an object has to disappear. You disappear first with the skeleton, then from the skeleton, release. Yes?
When you say deity yoga, does that correlate to the idam of the fivefold path of Mahamudra?
In general, deity yoga.
I've never heard deity yoga. Is it like the idam?
Yes, idam is deity yoga.
Is deity yoga.
Yeah. La yin liao zhu.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's the correct technical term for the practice.
Okay.
La yin liao zhu. Liao zhu is yoga. La is deity. La yin liao zhu. Jidin Sungwan has these teachings, very brief but pithy teachings, methods for, you could say, maintenance of physical health. Of course, he gave this to his meditators. They all begin with, so it's related to kind of dispelling different types of physical ailments, common physical ailments that meditators encounter, practitioners encounter. And these instructions are all kind of begin with, first see yourself as a skeleton, and then from there release fixation on the body itself. And then specific kind of techniques are given depending on what kind of ailment. So it's an interesting kind of, like you you get very specific or technical about, dispelling a particular ailment. But the ailment cannot be dispelled as long as we're fixated on this body. And so whether we actually practice those methods of dispelling ailments, I think it's up to individuals. But therein is an important thing about how we approach our health. The principle can be applied. As you deal with your health issues, you have to meditate on, you have to train your mind on, this is not real. Then you practice, attending to this for the benefit of others. That's why we then, use the different methods, whether given by Jiden Sangha, or, by, the doctors that you see. Otherwise, it's so easy to obsess, on this, as we have health, issues, or as people that we care about have health issues. And we obsess, and then it will not solve. So, same with, like if we got a wake-up call about our mortality, whether it's being told that you have this or that, and you have this long to live or whatever. First thing you need to know is, well, of course we're all going to die, and you have to really work on that point. Of course we're all going to die. But once we have accepted that, train to be free from the tyranny of, maybe I won't die. Then there are specific kind of instructions given to how to lengthen your lifespan. Why? Because not so that you can, create more suffering in the world for yourself or others, but so that you can extend your lifespan, so that you can, complete your training, your transformation. So all these different methods, then coming back to like this weekend, this past weekend, two blessing and empowerments were given. The first one, Vajrasattva, is I think many of us are familiar with, and it's part of Ngondro, the second practice in the preliminary, the Ngondro practice. Actually, the practice of Ngondro does not require a Vajrasattva empowerment. But having a Vajrasattva empowerment creates a closeness, or at least offers the potential for you to have a closeness to this deity or to this principle. So if you were here, most wonderful. If you're not here, it doesn't stop you. It's not an obstacle to practicing the Vajrasattva meditation. Because in the Vajrasattva meditation, you don't become Vajrasattva. They say that if you were to imagine or visualize yourself as the deity, then you should receive the proper empowerment of that deity. In the Vajrasattva practice, you don't see yourself as Vajrasattva. In the Ngondro, there are Vajrasattva I have received before what's called a 9-level Vajrasattva. And there, yeah, as you go through the levels, you do see yourself as Vajrasattva. But on the Mondro preliminary foundational practices, Vajrasattva is the guru above your head, and then the purifying of Ikpa, karma, Papa in Sanskrit. Sunday was Vajra Vidarana. The Vajra Vidarana has a more kind of active and specific principle going on there, which is this special kind of method or ritual or therapy for removing dripa. We talk quite a bit about that, right? Dripa. Dripa is the pollution that we pick up, especially pollution that adheres to us simply us being innocent bystanders. Vajrasattva is not innocent bystander. Vajrasattva is the kind of negative karma that we intentionally created, the breaking of vows that we intentionally did, knowingly did, damaging of samaya that we consciously did. Vajrasattva is to cleanse, right? To purify those. Vajravidarana is more about the innocent bystander, guilty by implication, by association, secondary smoke. Yeah, it's meant for that. And a lot of that we kind of, and then of course, why some of us are more susceptible to dripa than others, then that has to do with dikpa. That has to do with the conscious breaking of vows, creating of the 10 non-virtues, makes us more susceptible to being affected by dripa. So you could see dripa as the proximate cause of suffering and dikpa as the distant cause of suffering. Both proximate and distant causes of suffering are caused by the 3 poisons, which is the result of fixation. So germs and viruses and all that are the proximate causes of suffering. And so they are like dripa. So His Eminence talked about how food that we eat that might be contaminated. Vajravidarana is specifically to counteract that, to destroy that. So we have to practice, both. As we work on the distant causes of suffering, it will be helpful to also have the technique or the method to prevent these proximate causes from attacking when we're weak. But if all we do is attend to the proximate cause and don't understand that why we are more susceptible to contagion and to viruses is because we have a weak constitution, then it's not a good approach either. And so these are the two. This is how these two are related. Any questions? Yes.
Okay, really, just briefly, what are the 3 poisons?
What are the 3 poisons?
Ignorance.
Attachment, aversion.
They are like the root of all suffering. Ignorance, attachment, and aversion. Due to ignorance or confusion, then we fixate. And our fixation has 2 flavors. Pushing or pulling, attachment or aversion. And when attachment and aversion becomes full force, then they become lusting and aggression. Hating, outright hate. But that outright hate comes from basic building blocks of seemingly innocent and inconsequential aversion to things. Then they build up and they build up and they build up and they build up, then they become resentment, they become vengeance, they become hatred, outright wanting to cause harm. Attachment, when it becomes lust, uncontrollable lust, and you can't live without it, and you don't want anybody else to have it, if you can't have it, all that sort of stuff, it comes from, it all began by very innocent liking something. And that like builds and builds and builds and builds. Yes.
So this past weekend, when there was the speaking of the king.
Of what?
The king who committed.
The 5 heinous.
Patricide.
Yeah.
Patricide. I was reflecting on that, and the king being sort of like the noble essence of the song. And if the patricide was not an actual killing, but more of holding a grudge against the father and the mother, and that led to the sickness in the kingdom.
The
story is actually literal.
No, literally. Yeah. He was a historical figure. We know what happened. Bimbisara is recorded in non-Buddhist sources as well, because turns out Bimbisara, of course, Buddhists believe or remember him as a great patron of Buddhism, but it turns out he was a patron of Jainism, he was a patron of many religious orders. But the fact remained, his son killed him. And this is a story of royalty throughout all royal families everywhere in the world. Killing your father is like basic king business.
Yeah. 101.
And before that, kill all your siblings.
Is that the same story as the 7th Dalai Lama?
No. 7th Dalai Lama is Tibet. This is 2,500 years ago in India.
Okay.
So then there's actually both like a literal killing and the killing of the spirit.
Well, we could go there, but literally here, he killed his father.
But he harmed himself.
And indirectly, then he, caused the death of his mother. Right? So that's how heinous. And so Dikpa definitely was created. But meanwhile, the Dripa that affected the whole realm, which, his subjects did not kill their fathers or their mothers, but they were the innocent bystanders that were affected by the Dripa that the king created with his actions. So probably you can count on, I suppose, these next few Saturdays, the service on Saturday, we will do either or both of these practices, the Vajrasattva and the Vajravidarana. If you have Vidarana water, you want to be doubly, triply, quadruply charged, bring them. If you don't, maybe we'll share them.
What if you're doing it at home?
What if?
Yeah, I've been doing mine at home.
You'll be arrested.
I'd be arrested.
Yes.
Karma police.
Well, I don't know why either. Like, I'm just saying we are doing this on Saturdays, so. Well, then don't do it at home. Anyway. The next few Saturdays, if you have no obstacles, some people will be here doing these two practices, and then I'll elaborate on the nuances of either of them.
I had a favor because I had asked him a question. Could you give me one of those rubbery talkers? I want to have these.
Bill, maybe you and the team has something to tell us, maybe some updates or maybe.
Oh.
Nothing formal. I know you all met today, but I'm sure other people are curious, like what we're planning next. The more we all know, and if knowing is knowing that we don't know yet, that's fine too.
Okay, we're all here. Judy, how would you like to share? I'll be happy to, but I talk too much. Anyone else from the meeting today?
I'll talk if you want.
Please.
Okay, so we each shared kind of what we feel is the most important way to move forward. And that, in a sense, facilitated getting focused on.
Okay, 1 minute.
Or commercial break.
Something from Savannah.
Savannah.
Girl from Savannah. Okay, now you can.
Okay, skip this ad, we're on YouTube. So we went around and basically discussed, what each person felt was most important to hone in on. And in that way, we kind of naturally came up with some of the main issues, such as, increasing membership, keeping our eye on that. I kind of wanted to know where we stood number-wise. I thought it was important for us to have a sense of that, and moving forward in our strategy and all that. And Jess is kind of honing in on the GoFundMe and how to set up that page and get that going. And what else did we talk about? We talked about way of moving forward. What does that look like in terms of the structure, what is urban Dharma? Is it going to be the way it is now? Do we have a vision of what we see urban Dharmas to be? And wanting some questions answered about that or honing that in. And then also, Bill and I talked about sending out a letter, the next letter that we talked about to sustaining members. Did I leave anything out? Oh, and then all of the information that's been written down on all the pieces of paper. Somehow or other, we're going to process that and find out about it. Yeah. And then there was a lot of talking amongst ourselves in between all that.
I'll add. You go ahead.
We're focusing on the current groups that meet here.
Yes, thank you. That's what you were talking about. Say that again.
To talk to the groups, which people are doing, the groups that currently meet here, including the wellness group, to ask them to become sustaining members and ask their people to become sustaining members, because they all enjoy the space. So
The sheets that we all wrote on at the town hall meetings provided a lot of information. And Hun, I don't know if you were privy to the topics, but they were sharing my heart about urban Dharma, ideas about networking, more logistical things, ideas about networking and garnering who our community is. My favorite, commitments, where people could write commitments, and we did get a lot. And then, what was the other? Oh, how to pull the rest of our urban Dharma shared groups into the fold. And we learned a lot, and we got a lot written down, and we have a lot more to do. We just really touched on all those subjects tonight. We just have so much. So we are solidly in the middle of the process. But I think it is worthy to announce what we learned about our finances. Is that worthy to announce? That we seem to be getting, if the current people who contributed and committed to contribute that much and increase their contributions, we realized between a quarter and a third of our need are changing our need, about $350 a month. So that was very good news in this time. The commitments.
Yeah, 6 new members.
6 new sustaining members and several of the people who upped it. And so that netted something like $350 a month, which we're identifying really roughly in this beginning fledgling stage, our unmet need to be about between around $1,200 a month. So we already came up more than 25% if those stick. So that's good. If we made a graphic of a tree that we might start, like the thermometer and we might start putting that in and showing that while we're still in this very fledgling or middle point of our campaign, it's already happening. And we did talk about, one of the topics we talked about was, even though we don't know whether we're going to ultimately come up with enough commitment of money to stay here, we're going to act as if in the time being and keep moving in that direction until we know otherwise.
And talking about, just having, we're going to meet again, and not next week, but the week after, but there are things that will happen.
Yes,
then.
and we would like to grow our committee.
Yes.
With people our team. We would like to grow our team.
Did you guys discuss about, there was one element that came up in the 2 meetings that I attended about broadening our broadening our, who we are. That whole thing about people, not knowing that we even exist, so we can get more pledges.
I think it's fair to say that's definitely on our agenda. We
Is it?
have,
Okay.
we have all that information that is on those sheets.
The list was really long.
The list is really long, and all we literally could do was today was quickly talk about, well, where do we start first? We have all this new information, so we're in that stage.
We tried to hit the top,
Yeah,
yeah.
and yet everything is recorded,
Yeah.
and we're working on collating everything that was written down into a list that we will start to turn into tasks and divvy that up and help take the energy that was here. Grant, your name came up, if you don't mind my saying, because you stood up and volunteered to help us speak with Mountain Mindfulness, and Daniel's going to get involved, and I think you are
As a
too.
matter of
Because
fact,
did that happen last
this
night?
Monday night,
Yep.
I introduced it to the conversation at the end of the group. Mark helped out a bit there too, just making sure that they knew the situation, and that there was some urgency, and that Mountain Mindfulness is not just a guest in the space, but is a part of the larger Dharma community here. And having a regular attendance of 20 or so or more people every week, that's a large group of people that could come and show their appreciation. What they do have at the end of each night there is the Donna Bowl, and they always bring that up. But what I suggested at a time like this, it may be, if possible, more beneficial if we could have, instead of the Donna Bowl, if you're capable, to have a more regular, ongoing, predictable donation to a sustainable membership, so that we can plan events and plan our financial future and get a better idea of what we're going to be capable of, particularly as the next couple of months unfold. And just generally decide, is this a space as Mountain Mindfulness that we appreciate enough? And so individual sustaining memberships was talked about.
Did we give you some forms to bring?
I didn't have any.
Because we've got a whole basket of them over there now, yeah, okay.
The leadership in that group did say that their sort of team was going to be getting together a couple of times and discussing how Mountain Mindfulness might be better able to contribute more to urban Dharma as a whole, rather than what they have been doing so far. I'm committed to each week reintroducing it as part of the conversation until someone says we get the idea.
Thank you.
And just making sure, like at this group, if there's something, these new ideas, like sharing what you guys discussed, and then maybe I can hear some feedback too, and that way I can introduce that to the Mountain Mindfulness group. Because if people are interested, I didn't get a sense that, we need to include them as part of the urban Dharma family moving forward, rather than just being a group that comes Monday night and is really grateful to be here and leaves. And so that's going to be sort of the steps that I try to gradually take from my point of view moving forward on Monday nights. And so that's kind of what was discussed this last week.
I like how you said ongoing each week, and that's a good way to, and we do have, please take a stack of those membership forms. Does everybody know, I think everybody was at all the meetings, that we have these membership forms that, and hand them out to anyone. Because they're for anyone who may, I have a sister who gives some amount of dollars a year to an old college I used to go to, and I think I'm going to send her one and say, this is more important to me. Can you do this once a year, a sustaining member?
I might make one more point too. Is there any part of becoming a sustaining member that brings anything as part of your membership? Or are you just someone that regularly contributes? As a sustaining member of Urban Dharma, are there certain benefits that come along with that membership? That's one thing. And the other thing is, Mark brought up the disparity between what we currently have and what we need to get to. And I think that's great for people to know, but I think we also need to talk about it in terms of being a very realistic possibility, because it can sound a bit scary, I think. the amount that we need to get to based on where we're at. So I think it's definitely important to talk about it in terms of a reachable goal instead of just this is where we're at as well.
Scary is a relative term, and we already have discovered if the change that we've seen sticks, we're already 25 to 30% there in our first few weeks.
Yeah, in other words, that might be scary to somebody like Mountain Mindfulness, that actually this is their home. So they might think their home might go away. Okay.
That's not a bad thing, though.
Yeah.
No, as long as they give.
Yeah, well, it's a balance between,
Yes.
kind of like, it's a serious need, but it's a need that we can achieve. It's achievable. And I think the thermometer idea on one of these walls, please ask me first which walls, would be a good one that visually, each time people come in, rather prominently, they can see.
We made Laura made a quick outline of a tree because we had that tree and we needed a symbol and we didn't want to use any religious symbols. So we picked the tree. So the tree will be if that's okay with everyone, that will be our thermometer and we will just fill it with green, if that's okay. And you show it.
I don't know, is it a bad idea to do a stupa? Because the stupa does have, we put treasures in stupa.
Well, something clean, visually,
Right.
I think,
It makes sense.
don't need to be cute or symbolic, but something clean and easily recognizable that people don't have to educate themselves, like what does this mean? So I think a thermometer has a certain simplicity to it. Everybody understands what that means.
It's like a stop sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Thermometer.
probably good, and then if we
You
can
can make
get
it green.
a simple,
Okay.
good one that we could, also easily put it up, hopefully just up and not down.
Yep.
Right?
We'll do that.
So another thing I thought of is that that half page that was sent out, that Sheila prepared. What is the shortfall? I think that information should go out in the general email, for example, because we sent out oh my God, and there could be people that are so, oh my God, I don't know, I can't do anything about it. But I think if they look at that, they go, oh, actually, we're not talking about 50,000 that we are short of. We're talking about 18 or whatever, right? And then this updated information of like, hey, if everything stays, whatever we're already getting stays constant, we already have a third of what we need, So I think that's helpful. One thought I have is now taking off head of spiritual director and all of that, just logistically. One thought I had was like, I wonder if it would, again, help people to kind of see, we don't need to publicize the names of the sustaining members, but we assign them A to Z and have a list with the amounts.
Like a code name. That's a great idea.
Well, that's
There
our-
seems to be a lot of questions on how much.
Right, and so
why.
people can see, one person gives $150 a month right now. And, and we have one person who gives $1 a month too. So I think if people can see, A gives this much a month, B gives,
We could make a graph, a bell graph out of it. Just a simple showing.
I don't know these things, however you manifest that. But I think visually I'm graph challenged. So I look at the graph, I'm like, I don't know what this means. But I could be the exception. So ignore. My idea is like, I think for people to be able to see, like 4 people gives 50 a month, 5, and then some people would actually be kind of like, oh, only so few giving? Maybe I can do something. Or some people might look and say, oh, you mean you can also give 5 a month? Oh, that I can do. So you can appeal to both, So I think when they see the roster, remove the names, but have the roster of current sustaining members. I think that's helpful. With mountain mindfulness, as a suggestion, maybe both the mountain mindfulness to all the other groups, including the wellness groups, to offer them this idea. I don't think we want to implement that on our side, but to offer them this idea, such as what you've already said. Brian?
Grant.
Grant. Okay. I don't know where I got Brian from. To offer them this idea, like, might it be helpful to their individual groups to have a challenge that they internally want to meet monthly, so that then it becomes easier for them as a talking point to their membership and the random people that come to their programs, because they too have random people who come and go. You know, if they can say, you know, we feel obligated monthly to provide this much to keep this space available for our use. And this month, we have only reached 2/3 of it. And now we are already at the last week. Hello, can you all help out? You know, I don't think we want to yet get into the business of saying your rent is this much, the portion of your rent, you know, but offering this, you know, idea that if each of your group has a target that you want to commit to, it will also make it easier for people who care about your group to meet it. Yes, when you have a specific target that you set internally among the groups.
Might be able to speak with just some of the leaders of that group.
Right. Rather than the large membership. Yeah, just talk to the leadership, and then they can mull over that, and whatever they decide is fine. You know.
Tuesday and today, I saw those people. I mean, I've seen them all. They all want to know where we stand.
Right.
They are very enthusiastic,
right.
And they want to know where we stand, how the meetings went, and actually some of them came to the meetings.
Right.
So they're very.
So even a preliminary report of the meetings without these numbers is important. Yeah. People want to know, like, where are we now? Where are we now?
Get a word out.
You know. And because people want to know, we want to provide that.
The biggest question is, how many sustaining members do we have? That's continually asked me, and I don't know.
It's around 65.
Yes.
Okay.
So it occurs to me, people just want to be motivated in their heart to do this, not to be told what to do or ask.
Yes.
If they just want to.
That's, I think it's true.
It seems like the cost for urban Dharma is around $120 a day for rent. So people could wrap their mind around the idea of,
yes,
oh, we come here, we kind of need to contribute $120 as a group for being here today.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just know that this is costing $120. Right.
So some translation to, exactly.
And I was involved with fundraising and some things I learned with community radio. A real common mistake, and I'm not saying anybody's making this mistake, I haven't heard it, but it does happen, is when we would come on and say, if you like democracy now, we need you to pledge to the radio station, because then somebody has an out. They say, well, I don't like democracy now, so I'm not getting it. So that kind of thing is a caveat to be aware of, is giving people an out where they just go like, oh, well, I don't have to do anything. So if they just want to do it in their heart and they just have the information, then they may be like, well, geez, you know, I got $10 million. I could just throw $120 in here and then everybody else is icing on the cake. You know, so that's my thought.
Thank you. So you brought up, like, you know, public radio, community radio. I think moving forward, this is one of the things that Urban Dharma has to get comfortable. Mm-hmm. Like every year we will have this, just like public radio. I mean, we do follow that model, annual fund drive. We let people know, hey, we're getting close to this and we are short this much.
Actually, every 6 months.
Yeah, and so if we can, you know, get used to this idea.
And it might be advantageous if you see the connection to connect it with an annual Buddhist, you know, day of the year that may be a good day for.
And also,
period
yeah,
of ti- or
well,
period of time.
there is a practical one, which is end of year contributions, people and their taxes. So that's basically, between, I think, Thanksgiving and Christmas, that's the time to get people. Then the other time to get people conveniently is actually like Vesak season, which is around May, June. So that's like kind of 6 months separated.
I hate when
Which
Well,
season?
everybody in the world is asking at the end of the year, so we might do better not to get into the end of the year.
I was gonna agree with that, but the holiday season is not a good time. If you wanna look at tax time, maybe like spring and fall are good times, like April 1st and October 1st. And then you're falling into, oh, this is this time of change.
It's also tax return area.
Yeah.
People are gonna
Yeah,
have this.
there's the flip side too, they just pay taxes.
Yeah,
So,
so,
I mean,
details you
I
all
don't think
discuss.
Nah,
It's
Yeah,
not,
these are all details.
just do it.
I don't want to get
I'm hearing we
into.
have support for an annual
Yeah,
fund
right,
drive.
you're
is
also
what I'm
not gonna
hearing.
get people when they're going in and out of school with their kids. So.
But I just wanted to remind Bill to include, Jubilee. Because we shared spaces, we shared programs, they're part of a group too.
Somebody, somewhere on one of those sheets, said they would be a liaison to Jubilee, I just can't remember. And I reached out to Hartwood.
We still have a board member
We have a board member from Jubilee.
who is
That's it, who is it?
Vicky Garland.
But I
Okay.
just take it as any of the other suggestions, because asking another church for money, I don't.
It's not about asking for money, it's about networking with them. About
Also,
coming-
they come here once a month.
Yeah, they come and do the Sunday with us.
So they are a stakeholder.
Yeah.
So if we present it as,
It's more about letting them
They
know,
can
not
reach
asking
a
them. for
broader
money.
audience.
Biggest takeaways from the meetings that we had was the fact that there's groups or people that might not even be Buddhist, but that enjoy the space
Mhm.
and they love the space.
Mhm.
And so for me, that just opened up a whole big door. We've always focused on somebody interested in Buddhism, but there's a lot of people that want to support this space because they come in and meditate during the day.
And I had more people today than I've ever had.
Oh, yeah, Wednesday's a big day.
Yeah, that was really cool. And
So-
and some of them were people that came to the meetings last week. And so, yeah, we're just kind of getting out. We gotta keep that up.
That was the feedback I got, again, from like what you just said with Whole Foods, because that all the people that were there were from all walks of life, and they all responded to, this is a meditative temple in the middle of the city that we can all go to, we didn't know it was there. It wasn't about Buddhism for them, it was about a place, a refuge.
So in terms of that, a place, a refuge, so one of the things I've thought about is that despite being here, and of course, I think we never really, at least I never said it, building of this hotel have impacted. But when it's done, then it will be good. But the last year and a half, there's a lot of traffic that has not arrived here because no one wants to come near this area. Yeah, it's blocked, right? So along those lines, there are still, even though we're down here, many people still have no idea we're here. And the only cure to that is when we have events, when we have flyers, they have to be beyond these 6 windows here. And I can tell you myself that for the last year, whenever I print these posters, it was easier for me just print 6 and put it up and not feel like I have to harass people to say, hey, go put this up. But I think collectively we have to get in the mode of like identifying, places that we will commit to go putting them
We
up.
could make a regular list that we don't
Yeah.
forget whenever we have.
And so still a lot of people don't know we exist. So then along the lines of like, this is a sanctuary, this is a quiet space. So we could make flyers that say, this is a Buddhist temple. We could also make flyers that are non-Buddhist friendly to let people know this is a sanctuary, a quiet space, a sacred space. And from time to time, put it out there, some lampposts, some, so creatively kind of inviting, letting people know, no, we welcome you. You don't have to be Buddhist to be in this space.
The team has a question for you that I was going to ask you.
Sure.
How would you feel if someone came in and did a session with singing bowls and got a regular once a month or once every couple of
That's fine, as long as
weeks,
they're not saying this is Buddhist.
Right.
That's where the line is.
We're clear about that, right?
Yeah. I'm only very fussy about, if someone comes here. So we have had people in the past
Like the
to kind of
practices.
get us interested. They'll say, and then I will going to say how this is connected to Buddhism. I say, sorry, no need to do that. Just do what you do. Don't try to connect it to Buddhism. That's when I'm concerned.
Good. Very well, thank you.
So
I think we can be very careful about that, but we identified at the retreat 3 years ago that we needed to reach the casual seekers who needed a space, who needed some support, but who were never going to be Buddhist. And that's what I think we're beginning to finally focus on in this, because perhaps, I don't know, but probably many of the people who are Buddhist do know about us. They've researched and looked, and they come up with urban Dharma. But it's all these people out here who are anxious and depressed and need something.
the nuns, spiritual nuns, NONES.
That's right. And we know they exist. We've known they existed for.
And that's about reaching out. That's
And
about
that's
putting
about
out
reaching
flyers. That's about, putting ads in the Mountain Express. So
And
we have to
having
spend
more
some
programs.
money on that.
Having more programs that are not typically Buddhist, or that aren't Buddhist, but are supportive. If we can begin to do something.
You have to recruit programmers.
Right, I understand that, but that, I think there's a need out there that we can meet.
So who is going to make all this happen?
We are.
Right. That's what I want to see. Like I said, this Kaygu Sangha is where I spend the most time thinking about and trying to develop. Where I need you to give back is not to me, but to committing to be, the front line of this. That's where it's, because there's no one else that's going to do it if this group doesn't do it. So what I'm saying is that, this is not just about money. Money is kind of secondary. Primary is this, and it takes all of us. And so you'll think about programs, that can be done here. And, if you have any questions about programming, let me state very clearly, the only guideline is that if it's a Buddhist program, you have to check with me. If it is not a Buddhist program that is, and I know your sense of what's appropriate or not, I really trust you, then no need to ask me even. If the schedule works out, if someone wants to do it, do it.
What is the other thing? You talked about letting people in while they're doing their programs.
Oh, yeah, because, a lot of the programs, like the yoga groups meet, nobody can come in while they're meeting. And so it's like, why not have something going on where people are doing things when the store is open during the day? That it's not closed off. I mean,
Yes.
they might not be able to attend in here, but they can still come in.
Yes.
And that would be so much better.
Open it up to more.
Yeah, but again, we have to go recruit.
Well, we got the.
We're working on that.
We
We got a long list we gotta,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a process.
There's a standard amount that, when programs use a space, that they actually donate to the space when they get their money donations at the end of it. So I'll volunteer to find out specifically what that amount is. Because my preliminary research shows it's 50-50.
Edwina, what did you just volunteer to do?
The,
I'm writing it down.
find out about when a program comes in, like, so let's say someone wants to do sound healing here, or, Qigong, we already have that, right?
Oh, what the appropriate
Yeah,
portion is for us.
what the actual usual split is. Currently, it's 60-40.
Talk, yeah,
They
talk,
get 60,
talk,
we get
just
40.
talk to Judy about it.
The orange field's 50-50, you
Okay,
know that.
take my name off of that, because it sounds like Judy's already doing that.
Judy's working on it?
And then I have
I
another
wanna
question,
investigate
when I look at other, sites, Han, this is a question for you. Like even sometimes when you buy something like from Amazon, from a certain vendor, or a certain category of item through Amazon, and it says, would you like to donate 10% to this specific cause for this week? Is that something that could possibly be built in through your store so that when people make the purchase, they can say, yeah, I'll donate 10% of my purchase today. Or, I mean, an increase of 10%. Let's say they spend $100 and then they want to say, yes, I will donate $10 to Urban Dharma to keep Urban Dharma open. I can take screenshots of places that do that and show those to you if you want.
Amazon has,
Smile.
Amazon has the infrastructure and the accountants.
But there's
And the legal team.
monasteries that do it too. So you can put me down for that, so.
Say that again, what you.
No, I'm saying myself as a business owner of the Tibetan Spirit, I don't have the support.
You don't have the means, the technology.
Right, the technology
Okay, so the next thing I want to say
to
is
do that.
we had
currently.
somebody that attended the program on this weekend, and he'll be available after July 12th. And what he would like to see is be able to go to the website and to be able to have people become a sustaining member. And he has that knowledge and the know-how, and he can set up the program and
Talk to
people will
Laura.
just, and I introduced you guys on that day, and he'll be available after July 12th.
Okay,
But he's the geek in that regard. So that thing he would, and he wants to do it. He wants to help.
one more very
Do you
helpful,
remember that when you talked to him?
I don't know
What they just talked about?
I need more information on that.
Yeah.
so Edwina, when he
Contact
comes,
us.
will you make sure you get that?
Yeah, I introduced him the other day, and then they'll talk, but it's gonna be after July 12th.
Okay, you can put that conversation.
Yep.
Good. We also just, I had heard things about sandwich boards out front and all that. We now have a friend at the city, a woman who came who said, I can make things happen. I can, help you with whatever needs to happen. She said, you can do sandwich boards out there. Curb type permits. If we want to have a display, if we ever want to have a table, if we want to put something out there that.
We have gotten that before.
Okay.
And then the board decided not to do it because of insurance.
Okay.
So, which is not to say we can't do it again.
We will look at that.
It's
again.
just, it's just, it's not this difficult. You just fill in the form and then
Right.
you show that you have insurance, basically. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We had it for a year. And of course, after we got the permit, people were too busy to put the sandwich board outside.
Well, we may do other things too.
Yeah.
One of the things that did come up was somebody said, they wondered if there was any way that what happens in here might be represented in words on the window somewhere. In a heartfelt way, like what we do here, or some, if we have a quote or something that somebody.
Yeah, nothing better than these quotes that have been coming in.
Yeah, exactly. So in other words, something that basically speaks to your Asheville person who's poking in and says, this all looks very Buddhist, I don't think I'm dressed right, I don't know, all those questions that just, there's a statement on there that is very welcoming and inviting, and it's true to what we do here, and it's a way that perhaps something there doesn't already. So we had that suggestion. We'd like to be able to talk about that.
I'm not sure anybody in Asheville has ever said, this looks too Buddhist, I'm not sure I'm dressed.
But yeah, those quotes, yes, you know.
Somebody else said, I don't know if they're, what did they say, if they're cannibal, it was something back in there, what did they, that they're sacrificing people or something. It was, you know, one of the other.
That might be across the street.
That someone was saying, you know, as facetiously, that they don't really know what's going on there. You've had the policy of having an open window that people can see in. This would just be another piece to
Famous
that.
quote, no goats were harmed,
Yeah,
unquote.
it might have been you who said it, huh? Sacrificing goats.
That thing on the window was about signage and marketing and making something so that people can easily relate in universal terms.
Right.
So what are the 3 words that would say Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in English? I think that would be something like true awareness community. Truth awareness community. And then people wouldn't have this, like, I don't know what that means, but they can relate to it. And that it's going to resonate is like something that they want in their life. So I wanted to let the team know I did a little bit of outreach with Lynn Pace, a friend of mine, the support team network of Buncombe County. And she's agreed that she would be willing to do support team training so that there is the overall team and then the teams that form to do other things. And it's a pretty simple 3-hour training of how people can work more effectively as a large team and also in subgroups of teams. We did that to develop a team called Heart Song. It's also a Warren Wilson. So she's agreed to do that. I would suggest maybe a small stipend of some kind, just to buy her lunch and pay for gas, something like that. She's now retired, and the support team network in Buncombe County is disbanded, but she has a great heart, and she responded that she would have an interest in doing that. So I'd be happy to talk with you more about that and organizational
What's her name?
Lynn Pace.
Pace?
Yes. Now you can just contact me.
I just want to put it as a note. I'll go through you.
I believe there is a downtown foundation, like call that, right?
I think you're right.
Uh,
I don't know what they do.
we might want to request a meeting.
The
Okay.
Downtown Association?
No, there's a downtown foundation. The landlords kind of referenced them at one point. It's a group of kind of, you know, people with investment, people who care about downtown, and investigate. You know, I don't know if that's the exact name, but there's a group downtown of people with means and people with vision that care about what's going on here in Asheville downtown, and making a case of
The way Julian
why
Price used to
we
be,
are
like,
important.
well-heeled.
Yeah.
Asheville
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, something like that.
It's exactly. I
John
used to
Grant was
work on
probably
Not
big
so
into that, Bill. John owns the.
I know John
You know
for
John?
25 years. Yeah.
Okay, well, he's probably, I don't know if he still is, but he probably at one point had.
Probably
a
asked.
thought in it.
So if I were to approach
Someone
John
like
Penn, you think he's a good person to
Well,
approach?
everybody
Or
asks,
ask someone like him and say, hey,
Yeah.
who do we
I
go
approach?
make a case of why we're important here?
and he's willing to do it,
Yes.
he'll offer, if he's
Right.
not, he'll send you somewhere, but everybody asks John.
Okay. Yeah, Julian's.
National Downtown Association Foundation.
Okay, so association and foundation.
Asheville downtown.
Now we figured it out.
Association.
That's small world.
It is foundation,
Association Foundation.
And it's a 501.
not
I think
and,
it is a
but
501.
foundation.
Oh.
Association,
Association.
foundation,
Association
Foundation.
Foundation, okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll
And
put
John's
that on
part
our
of
list.
that?
probably.
I'm sure
Does it show John as being part of that?
I'm not finding. I don't know that he is now. I mean, he's kind of aging out, but I bet he was, I mean, he was instrumental in building this.
Yeah.